Alright, so I want to just do a quick video talking about selection of crews for Odysseys, because I've seen a lot of difficulties with this, and it was something that I definitely struggled with a lot when I was starting off doing Odysseys. So this is the crew that I used for this week's Odyssey, and this is a moderately difficult Odyssey. It's not the hardest one ever, but yeah, some challenging stuff. So I want to talk about how I arrived at this team and the kinds of things that I look at when deciding an Odyssey team. So pretty much, the first thing that you kind of want to look for is what are your difficult levels. So in this one, this is really easy. Like, it's just hard standard, 65 rounds. This isn't a challenge. Same with this. This is on half cash. It's more of a concern. And this is on Apocalypse. So again, it's going to be more of a concern. And this was the one I found to be the most difficult. And then this, it's on a hard map, but it's a fairly standard mode, so it's not going to cause you too many problems. So you're really concerned about having stuff for these two. So that's the first thing we keep in mind. Now, when looking at it, Half Cash and Apocalypse are not especially eco-heavy modes, but in general in Odysseys, it's really nice to have stuff that's going to help you eco. And looking at this, you can see there's 3 eco options we have here. We have Chinook, we have Monkey Town, or potentially Monkey City, and we have Balloon Trap. Those are our options here. And I end up taking all of these, though Support Chinook is not particularly great, and I didn't really use it for any of these. It's a fine eco option, but I didn't end up using it. Same with Monkey Town, but Balloon Trap I did use quite a lot. That being said, it's often worth it to take all of these, and especially Village is that one kind of tower where you just always want it. I find if I'm offered the option of Village, I basically always take it, because it's really valuable. Village is amazing. Well, let's say we take Engineer and Village for now. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is considering how we need to do an early game, especially on those hard maps. If we're looking at Carts and Darts, there's probably a couple ways to do this, but of the options we have here, Ninja's probably our safest bet. So we're going to throw in that Ninja, and now we see we're capped to 1 as well. On firing range here, it's a similar story, and Apocalypse is a very camo-heavy mode, so camo defenses are really great. Again, Ninja. And on Workshop, I'm really looking at Spactory. Spike Factories are really good on Workshop. They're extremely powerful on this map. So I'm definitely leaning to wanting to have a Spike Factory. And I'm probably going to want to have 2 of them, but we'll get to that later. Right now, we're trying to figure out which monkeys we want. Now, we don't have Alchemist, which would be the classic tower to run with Ninja, because we're looking at Ninja. If we want to extend that into the mid-game, we'd want Alchemist. But we do have Embrittlement. And Embrittlement can often fill a role pretty similar to an Alchemist. So that's what I'm looking at next, is probably Embrittlement. Then you're looking at what else you're going to need for a mid-game. And one thing you probably want is Moab Press. It's a really good option here. You can see Moab Press looks really nice to have. And similarly, Moab Glue also looks really nice to have. Both of those are very strong options that are quite appealing. Another thing that's always appealing is Downdraft, and this is when I chose to take this Helipilot. So you're just sort of looking at what seems really useful for a mid-game in this part. On a similar vein, I went Mortar on the idea that I could potentially even do some artillery battery spamming, because I did notice Pat was a hero over here. And finally, I took Sniper. Sniper is another pick that's not necessarily super mid-game heavy. It can definitely work for that, but I took it on the logic of, if we look at this here, we don't really have many good cheap lead options. We have red hot ranks, which is great, but it's not going to work very well on firing range, just because you can't put them on those side blocks. We have Mortar, but Mortar misses, so it's not really the best option. And we have Cold Snap, which, again, misses. So having Sniper, which is a really consistent option, is just very nice to have. So this was the end up of tower layout that I ended up with. But how did I decide what I want to add more of? Well, first of all, can't add any more of these 4. Those are stopped. So what it's useful to have multiple of. And the first thing you come up with is Spactory. Spike Factories are super useful, partially because on this difficult map of firing range, we have 2 exits, which means we're going to need 2 Spike Factories. But the other reason is that with Spike Factory, if you have 2 of them, you can use one of them as a top path spike factory to save spikes on a second one, which is a bottom path spike factory. So this is a sort of common Chimp's idea, is to have both of those. Which makes having two spike factories super powerful, and that is how I beat Workshop. I went for a spike, balls, and then eventually mines, and a permaspike, and that was really effective. So the next thing I'm looking at is boomerangs. Moab Press is kind of awful if you only have one of them, but 3 is when it really becomes a very strong option. So 3 Moab Presses is a pretty clear choice for me. Another thing I'm looking at is when I talk about that artillery battery spam, well, I'm going to need a few more mortars. So we're going to put in 2 for now, and just adjust our other things around that idea. Ice is very nice to have more of. And I can see that, like, I have a lot of slots here left, so I think I'm going to commit a couple to ice. Ice can be useful for a few reasons to have multiple of. One thing I'm looking at is potentially an ice shard spam, which is a way I beat 63 on Workshop, which sounds like it shouldn't work, but it did, so. But yeah, ice can be quite powerful in groups, because you can really benefit from having multiple ice towers. Glue, because of glue stacking, is kind of awful when used with multiple of them, so I wasn't really looking at glue. Glue is sort of your last choice of all the towers to duplicate. If you have one glue gunner, that's good. And that can mean that if you have very few slots, you might not want to use glue gunner, because you're not really going to benefit from having multiple of them. But just the one is very useful. So from here, I'm sort of looking at, do I want more snipers or do I want more mortars? And the call I made when I did the Odyssey originally was 2 snipers. After doing it, probably wouldn't lean this much. I only really ever ended up using 1 sniper at a time just for lead popping, and probably would have gone 5 mortars instead of 4. But I was consistently using 4 mortars. Still, I went with 4 mortars and 3 snipers. Just on the logic of the 3 snipers would give me some potential early game flexibility, which can be very nice. Snipers are a pretty strong early game tower, and you don't really have a lot of these with these towers available. And mortars, you know, difference between 4 artillery batteries and 5 artillery batteries is pretty small. So I went with this. And for hero, you're really looking at what's going to be the most useful with the way you're planning to go about this. This build is really playing for an artillery battery spam. And with that, your options are really Striker or Pat. Striker, you get the ability cooldown reductions, but Pat, you do increase their damage quite a bit. I went with Pat in my original run. I might lean Striker now, considering the ability reductions and like attack speed buffs and stuff. But you can't really go wrong either way, and Pat definitely helped a lot. Heroes, though, just make sure it's a good choice. Pat also helps with Ninjutsu and stuff, so he's a pretty good pick. You'll find that Pat is a very consistently good hero in most Odysseys, as are Geraldo, Ben, and Sai are all really good in basically every Odyssey. Heroes that may be really good, but are a little more niche, like Brickle, are less commonly used. So even though Brickle's amazing, you don't see her used in Odysseys a ton if she's one of multiple options. But yeah, that sort of goes about my thought process that I would follow for looking at this. So you're starting by looking at your threats, you're looking at what you need to address those threats, you're looking at how you can eco and get some extra money, which will really help things out a lot, and then you're looking at what you can do to just ease things up and make things more reliable on especially the harder maps. And once you know what you're going to do on the harder maps, you just do the easy maps with what you have. If it works on the harder maps, it's going to work on the easy maps. So as long as you've addressed your threats, you're good. So, yeah. Good luck on this week's Odyssey. This crew works, but if you want to build your own one, you can. There's definitely some other ways to do this, and Super Monkey could be used, Druid could be used. You've got options here. But yeah, good luck. I might upload this after the Odyssey is done, but we'll see.